mata cha pita tvameva tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Thou art our loving mother, thou art our compassionate father, thou art our true friend and constant companion. Thou art our only wealth, and thou art our only wisdom. Thou art all in all. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Our subject this morning, the path of meditation. Loving worship of God, unceasing prayer, meditation, these form the very core of every religion. It is through such practices that life becomes transformed. Consciousness becomes illumined, and there reigns peace in heart. What is the practicality of religion? It must remove the ignorance that causes all suffering. That is the practicality of religion. It must fill our hearts with joy and peace and happiness. That is the practical aspect of religion. You see, rich or poor, young or old, there is some cause of worries, anxieties. There is some suffering, some mishap happening this way or that way, not to my liking. This is what is happening in the world. Whether one is rich or poor, young or old, a constant worry is there. There is nervousness. How to free ourselves from such and live in a state of tranquility when there is real peace within our heart. Of course, you know how it is when too much worry or too much anxiety and cannot face the situation, they take to drinking or take to drugs. Nobody wants to live in anxiety. But there is a remedy, a permanent remedy, and it is the ancient remedy. And religion seeks to find that, seeks to achieve that for us. Now what does it mean? Take for instance, the supreme truth is brought out and the state of perfection has been pointed out as the ideal. When Jesus said, "Be perfect even as the Father which is in heaven is perfect." You see, that perfection is to be achieved. And without that perfection, there will be lack. But is it an utopia? Where is that perfection? It's in Godhead. As St. Paul pointed out, ye are complete in Godhead. But that seems an utopia. How many have achieved that? We do not see examples. No, we see examples, but very few. Naturally, the question is asked, but why don't we see around us men with that perfect experience of God, illumined soul, who has that peace within his heart? The reason is very few people seek for it. Ask within yourselves, do I want God? Do I desire for God? Yes, we are seeking the effects. Peace, everybody seeks. Happiness, everybody seeks. Life, everybody seeks. And though they go and try to find such everywhere else and becomes frustrated, yet they do not go to seek for such where they can be found. And if you seek for God, in whom there is peace, the life eternal, and freedom and everything, you are bound to succeed. There is no question about that. You see, philosophically it has been pointed out that this perfection is not something that you don't have, you have to gain by some means or other. No. This perfection is already there in each one of us. It's an accomplished fact. You see, just as there is a buried treasure underneath, but you have to dig that ground and you are sure to find that treasure. Similarly, there is the buried treasure in each one of us. The kingdom of God is within, already accomplished. You have to enter into that kingdom, of course. So it is not an utopia. It is something that is already there, covered by ignorance. And that ignorance you have to remove. And that is the fundamental truth in every religion. In simple words, there is the kingdom of God within. Know ye not ye are the living temples of God, walking temples of God. Look within. Then, what is this individual man then? I don't consider I am that God. Nobody can think I am God. So what is this individual man? A beautiful truth is brought out in the teachings of the Upanishads. So I shall quote to you. Thou Brahman immortal, and thou woven of clay, two beings yet one, like two beautiful birds. You see, there are two beings, as it were, in each one of us. There is immortal Brahman. That is your true nature. But you consider yourself an individual man, which is woven of clay. Why is it woven of clay? You see, if you analyze what this individual man is, you'll find it is just a shadow, a reflection. It has no reality. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the illustration, take the onion and peel one layer after another to find out what substance is there inside that onion. And what do you find? Nothing. Similarly, try to analyze yourself. What are you? What am I? What is that individuality? Am I the body, the mind, the senses, or a composite of all these? And what do you find? That you are changing all the time. None of these is lasting. Then your character. If that is your individuality or if that is your personality, then do you mean to say that what is the character of a thief? Stealing. Should he not give up stealing? If he does, then he gives up his personality. So where is this individuality? Where is this so-called personality? We are not yet individuals. We have to find our individuality in the infinite, in God, who is dwelling within. So this individuality is known as something woven of clay. appearing as separate from that immortal Brahman. Thou Brahman immortal, and thou woven of clay, two beings yet one, like two beautiful birds, golden of plumage, companions inseparable, perched high up on the branches of the selfsame tree. As man, thou tastest the sweet fruits of the tree, the sweet and bitter fruits, this tree of life. As man, as that individual man, we taste the sweet and bitter fruits of the tree of life. That is the experience. But as Brahman, master of Maya, thou remainest unseen, immobile, calmly observing. Forgetting his oneness with him, forgetting his oneness with thee, bewildered by his weakness, full of sorrow is man. But let him look close on thee, know thee as himself, O Lord, most worshipful, and behold thy glory. Lo, all his heavy sorrow is turned to joy. It's so near. And just, you see, like this, that there's the buried treasure lying under my feet. I'm walking round and round and round, and I'm trying to seek that treasure everywhere else. It's right under me. But you see, we are asleep. We are asleep. That's ignorance, Buddha, he talked about this state of ignorance and this state of illumination. He compared to sleep and awakening. Just we have to wake up. We are dreaming, a prolonged dream. And because we are asleep, we do not know even the presence, the existence of that immortal Brahman within us. As the Gita says, fools pass blindly by the place of my dwelling, here in the human form, and of my majesty they know nothing at all, who am the Lord, their soul. You see, I exist, I live, I think, I act. What is it due to? Because of God dwelling within. It is His power that gives power to my mind, to my body, to my senses. The illustration is given in a pot full of water. There are potatoes and onions and eggplants boiling. And they are jumping. And the child in his ignorance thinks the potatoes are jumping. But what makes the potatoes and onions and eggplants jump? The heat underneath. Take away that heat. Similarly, in each one of us, there is that power, that God dwelling within. You see, it's just like the other day, I think I told you, that the background of every one of us is that infinite ocean. Call it God or Brahman or whatever you may. And we are just little waves or huge waves. But what are they made of? That ocean. And we suffer because each wave may think I'm separate from the ocean. You see, that's what makes the so-called individuality. That through ignorance you feel yourself separate. The whole universe, the objects and things, they have their meaning only if you can see that one reality behind. But we have forgotten that reality, we have forgotten that truth behind, and naturally we are seeking that, but feeling and experiencing nothing but frustration. There is that feeling of lack in every one of us. We want to fulfill that lack. How can we satisfy? Until we get the infinite. But of course, the question may be asked, why are the senses given to us? Why is this objective universe given to us? Does it mean that we must give up everything and close our eyes and think of God and love God only? Why are the senses given to us? Why is this objective universe given to us? You see, there are certain things common between animals, beasts, and human beings. Hunger, thirst, fear, sex. These are common. But what distinguishes a man from a beast? In him there is a sense of right and wrong that has evolved in him. And that is what distinguishes him from the beasts. Now again, we are born as human beings. We are born with that sense of right and wrong. But that does not give us the ultimate happiness that we are seeking. Because, for instance, there is a weakness in every one of us. We know what is right, but we have no inclination to do it. We know what is wrong, but we have no inclination to avoid that. So what is it that makes a human being again higher than the beasts? In other words, the man has to become a God-man. The sense of right is there, plus there must arise discrimination. What is that discrimination? We must learn what is real and what is unreal. In other words, what is eternal and what is ephemeral. And we must seek only the eternal. This discrimination has to evolve in every one of us in order that we can find that peace that passeth understanding. What is eternal? That is abiding. And as you analyze, you will find God alone is eternal. Everything else is fleeting. But then should we not run after fleeting? I may tell you not to run after, but every one of us will run after the fleeting. We cannot avoid it. The nature is given to us in order that we can experience. But if we only live for the experience of nature, then we lose the ideal. What is this nature for? In order that we can gain some experience. And also this nature is for us in order that we can gain liberation from everything. There are two objectives of this nature. There are two objectives for our senses and mind. And there is the objective to enjoy. And there is the objective to find liberation ultimately. You see, there is this saying that nature is for the soul, not the soul for nature. This nature is given to us in order that we might experience. But what is happening in our lives? We go to experience and get stuck by that experience. As the saying goes, the bee came to suck the honey, but its feet got stuck. Or just open a page of a book. And what do you have to do? You have to turn the pages. Read, then turn the pages. But instead of that, you are stuck to that one page. Yes, this nature is given to us in order that we might experience. We have learned our experience. Get over. Now, again, if we try to analyze, why is it that we try to gain this experience? What is it? You see, there is in every one of us that Godhead, the infinite. And that infinite is trying to express himself. There is the happiness, infinite happiness within us. But it remains hidden. And we want to express itself. So we go where it would give us happiness. In other words, the infinite, through every ways and means, through every struggle that man undergoes, the motive of all that struggle is that the God within trying to unfold himself. And what is it we learn ultimately? To quote the words of Vivekananda, you, the almighty cause of the universe, trying to reflect yourselves in little mud puddles. But after a time you realize it cannot be done. You retrace your step backward from where you began. That is the beginning of religion. Yes, we try to express ourselves. God is trying to express himself. Where? In the finite. The infinite cannot be expressed in the finite. This we learn. Then that we learn to go to the source. And that is the beginning of spiritual life. But as you can see, everybody does not therefore feel the need for God. They are satisfied with eating, drinking, and procreating. But only, it is brought out, only 4 classes of people seek to find God. There is the distressed, one who is suffering. He sees no way out of suffering. Then he tries to devote himself to God, to pray to God, to remove that suffering. Then there is another class who seek for objects and things, and they do not find fulfillment through any other means. So they pray to God. Then there is another class that are inquirers. What is the truth? What is the reality behind this universe? What am I? Then another class, and the highest class of people, those who have realized that God alone is true, everything else is fleeting. So these are the 4 classes of people that devote themselves to God. And ultimately, you see, as one begins from any standpoint, ultimately he comes to that stage when he realizes that God alone is real. And he devotes himself to God. He loves God for the sake of God, for no other reason. Now, of course, what is God? We have to devote ourselves to God. We have to meditate upon God. We understand that. But what is God? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, everything has been defiled through the lips of man, but only there is one truth that has never been uttered by the lips of man, and that is the truth of God. There is illustration given of a bee making big noise, then sitting on the flower, beginning to suck the honey, become silent. Then again, having drunk deep of that honey, makes a sweet humming noise. Similarly, the spiritual aspirants become silent when they begin to drink that sweetness of God. But before you have become a spiritual aspirant, we make big noise about God. God can be this or God cannot be that. We try to define. But when you become a truly spiritual aspirant, you go into silence, then there is the silence. But then again, becoming God intoxicated, you try to express, you try to define. And so it is said, truth is one, sages call by various names. And he can be said to be personal, he can be said to be impersonal, and he is also beyond. He is with form and he is without form. He is with attributes and he is without attributes. As it were, all contradictions meet in God. There's a beautiful passage in the Hindu scriptures. They call you by so many names, they divide you as it were by different names. Yet in each one of these is to be found your omnipotence. You are reached through any of these. See, it is not that when you accept a certain ideal of Godhead, call him a Christ or a Krishna or impersonal being, a power, whatever you conceive, that is a true conception. Even the child who is thinking of God in his way is conceiving God in the true way. You see, it is just like this. There is infinite ocean. The ocean, for instance, is colorless, formless. You dip different vessels into the ocean and take out, what do you see? Water, though formless, though colorless, has taken forms and colors of these different vessels according to their shapes and colors. Similarly, we dip ourselves into that ocean, as it were. And according to the coloring of our mind, according to the development of our mind, we shall conceive of him as such or such. You see, in Vedanta, for instance, they never try to define God. And when they try to express God, they express how that God can be this or that or anything that you can think of. And try to think in your own way. You see, if I give you an idea of God, God, you must meditate this way or that way, I'll form a sect. And it will not be a true sect. And so there is given that freedom to choose your ideal of Godhead. To quote the words of Vivekananda, the eternal Vedantic religion opens to mankind an infinite number of doors for ingress to the inner shrine of divinity, and places before humanity an almost inexhaustible array of ideals, there being in each of them a manifestation of the Eternal One. So in order that you can devote yourself to God, that in order that you can meditate upon God, you have to have a particular definite conception of God. Doesn't matter how you conceive him. And that we call the chosen ideal. And you have to devote yourself to that chosen ideal. Then what are the practices? First thing necessary is faith. You see, faith in what? Faith in the words of the scriptures, faith in the words of the teacher, of the guru. You see, at this point, let me explain to you or tell you a definite idea that Vedanta gives, and that is that spirituality is something that can be learned through the lips of a guru. By studying books, studying scriptures, yes, you get something, but real religion you can understand and grasp only when you hear it from the lips of a teacher. It's a very peculiar doctrine. And there is a great truth in this. Because unless one has realized God, has some glimpse of the truth of God at least, how can any book or any scripture can convince a man? It is the example, an example of a teacher, of a living man. And then again, there are ways and methods and means. Just as in order to study physics, you have to go to a professor, go to the laboratory to experiment, and the professor can show you how to experiment. Same way, you need a teacher. And to have the faith in the words of the teacher. Not only that, you see, the teacher has the power to transmit something. Religion is not mere book learning. Everything is contagious. Disease is contagious, health is contagious. Goodness, holiness is contagious, and evil is contagious. So to be in association with a holy man, you get something. Something is transmitted to you. So that is important. Then you learn what to practice. And you have to practice with enthusiasm, with interest. In other words, you have to create an interest for God. Then only you can practice meditation or concentration. But this interest comes gradually. There is that saying in the Bible, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So you have to have that discrimination. Know that that is the only treasure, that is the only reality, and then your heart also will be interested in that. Then certain regular habits. If a man is good or is a saint, he is nothing but a bundle of habits he has formed. A man is wicked or evil, that also due because he has formed a bundle of habits. And one bundle of habits can be transformed by creating another bundle of habits. You see, your mind, for instance, is worried, is full of anxiety. You do not know what to do about it. But if you form the habit of thinking of God, you'd hold on to the pillar of God immediately, and you will find that those worries and anxieties have gone away. See, it's a matter of habit. And you have to form that regular habit. Now, what are those regular habits? First is, it says cleanliness, physical and mental. The body has to be kept clean, which is easy. The mind is to be kept clean, has to be bathed every day. You see, mind has to be kept clean. That happens only after you have created much habit of purity, when you are established in purity. But in order that you can become established in purity, you have to learn to bathe the mind, as it were, every day. And what is this bathing the mind? To feel that presence of God, to feel that there is that infinite ocean background of yours. and you are bathed in that ocean of God. You see, it is taught that in order that you can devote yourself to God, and if you think that you are a sinner, that you are impure, you are not worthy of it, you cannot think of God. It's the like that can think of the like. It is the like that attracts the like. Your spirit, where no impurity can touch you, and God is spirit. With that attitude, you can only think of God. With that attitude, you can approach God. And so every time you go to worship or pray or meditate, bathe your mind. Feel that you have become pure by the touch of God. And then study, regular study. Study means again two things. Study of the words of illumined souls, not study of any book and every book. That is needed in the beginning. But when you have become a spiritual aspirant, then you need only to read such books that would rouse devotion, that great desire in you to realize the truth of God. And also study means what we call japam, repetition of the sacred name of God, which is a great help to keep our mind in God. Then there must be a habit of cheerfulness. You see, in order that the mind can be related to God, can attach itself to God, the mind has to be sattvic, we call. Sattvic means pure, clean, tranquil. To be moody, to be sad, is tamas, covered with dirt. And so that dirt has to be removed. You have to be cheerful. And that cheerfulness is the sign of that sattva, purity. You know, there is the old idea in the West about to be spiritual, that you have to have a long face and sad. No, that's tamas. From ignorance, from dirt and uncleanliness, that kind of mind, that's what the mind expresses. But if there is purity, if there is the thought of God, your mind will be cheerful. But this habit of cheerfulness also you have to cultivate. Then what is known as practice of regular habit of concentration. And you see, through the practice of concentration, you arrive at this stage of meditation. Now, for instance, as I already said, you have to have that feeling for your chosen ideal. You have to have a chosen ideal of God. Take Christ or light, any symbol of God, or anything that you can think of God. And that God again you have to feel as present within you. There is a shrine within your heart. And install God in the shrine of your heart. He is already there. But feel that presence. And then try to concentrate upon that. This is the practice of concentration. Many kinds of distractions will come, but you have to, through practice, remove those distractions. Then when the mind, you gain control over the mind, and through practice you gain that control, the mind becomes meditative. And when you have gained that control over your mind, and when the mind has become meditative, then a current will flow in your mind towards God. That is called Dhruva Smriti. That means constant recollectedness. You read about the truth that Christ had taught. Pray unceasingly. You see, this is constant recollectedness. It's a state to arrive at. Take, for instance, when somebody has fallen in love with somebody. I mean, just, in the beginning, not husband and wife love together, yes, they love. I do not say they do not love each other. But when you first fell in love, you see, how your mind was just possessed, as it were, by the thought of the other. You did other works, you kept yourself busy. Sometimes you may not have taste for food, you lose taste for food also in love sometimes. And but then you gradually get used to it. Similarly, you have to fall in love with God, and that comes to you, you see. You get into that state. But this is something different. Different this way. You see, in the other it gives you headache, in the other kind. And you lose your appetite and all that. But in this, it brings joy. And it never grows dim. It grows intenser and intenser. You see, the kind of love that I told you about between human beings, you see, after 10 days, it subsides. And then some after, say 10 years. And then you hate each other's company even. I hope it is not so, but it happens, But in this, it grows in intensity. It grows in intensity, and there is no satiety, as it were, to it. And there is that constant recollectedness. And through such constant recollectedness, there comes the lumen knowledge of God. And once you have this lumen knowledge of God, it stays with you. Now, let me explain to you again the whole principle of it. As already I stated, that there is that divinity within each one of us. God dwelling within. In each heart, in each human heart, there is a Christ concealed, to quote the words of the great mystic Jalaluddin Rumi. In each one of us, there is a Christ concealed. Now, why does he remain concealed? Because, you see, the mind is lashed into waves. We are not thinking of that. We are thinking of everything else. Then when we try to think of God, you see that habit. The mind is lashed into waves of thought, other thoughts than God. As we try to calm our mind, those thoughts come. Now, if somehow, through some practices, the mind can be made calm and tranquil, then that truth becomes revealed to us. The illustration is given. There's a lake. And at the bottom of the lake is the jewel. And you do not see the jewel. You cannot get to the jewel, because the waves of the lake are lashing, and also it is dirty. Clean the water, calm the waves, the ripples, and there will be that, you can see that jewel, and you can get hold of that jewel. Similarly, that God is dwelling, covered by ignorance. What is that ignorance? The restlessness of the mind. Now, if somehow we can control the restlessness of the mind, and how can we do that? Through repeated practice. Raise that wave of thought of God. All other thoughts will subside. And then will be revealed the truth of God. In this connection, I shall read out to you some teachings from the Gita on meditation. If a yogi has perfect control over his mind and struggles continually in this way to unite himself with God, he will come at last to the crowning peace of Nirvana, the peace that is in me. You see, as I said, it is not an utopia. It can be practically experienced by every one of us if only we try, we experiment with it. And what is the experiment? To bring the mind to God again and again. Think of God again and again. Yes, you forget. Again remember. You forget. Again remember. Or you try to practice concentration. You are trying to think of God. So many other thoughts intervene. Try it. Try to bring back and see the result. When can a man be said to have achieved union with Brahman? When his mind is under perfect control and freed from all desires, so that he becomes absorbed in the Atman and nothing else. You see what happens? We are trying to think of God, but some desire arises in the mind. And the mind loves to think upon those thoughts. Here, control that desire. Just tell your mind, all right, if you want it, later you can think of it. Now devote yourself. Nothing but habit, practice. The light of a lamp does not flicker in a windless place. That is the simile which describes a yogi of one-pointed mind who meditates upon the Atman. You see, as you practice that, then your mind will be steady, like that light sheltered from the wind. Steadiness. You know, I often give the illustration of electric light. You see, current is coming, and you see that steady light. But how do you see that is a steady light? Why is it that it is a steady light? Because the current is flowing without any break, continuous. If there is a break, then the light will flicker. And as it is, our mind is flickering. It is not steady, because other thoughts are intervening. So if you can repeat that thought without letting any other thought intervene between, then you have steadiness. And it is said in the yoga psychology that if you can make your mind steady like that, say for half an hour, without any distracting thought, the illumination will arise. Just think, for half an hour only, if your mind has a continuous flow of God, of the thought of God, you will have illumination. But of course, in order to reach that, you have to practice all those disciplines and fall in love with God. Then is it that it will flow. The light of a lamp does not flicker in a windless place. That is the simile which describes a yogi of one-pointed mind who meditates upon the Atman. When through the practice of yoga, the mind ceases its restless movement and becomes still, he realizes the Atman. At once the truth of God becomes revealed. It satisfies him entirely. You see what happens when you realize God. It satisfies him entirely. There is the fullness of life. The perfection is achieved. Then he knows that infinite happiness which can be realized by the purified heart, but is beyond the grasp of the senses. You see, this very truth is expressed by Jesus with another phrase, peace that passeth understanding. You see, we don't know what that peace means. The peace that passeth understanding. We cannot conceive of that. You see, it is so great that it is humanly impossible to conceive, and such kind of peace is achieved. And so in the Gita it points out, then he knows that infinite happiness which can be realized by the purified heart, but is beyond the grasp of the senses. Our senses cannot grasp that. He stands firm in this realization. Because of it, he can never again wander from the inmost truth of his being. See, once you realize that, once even if you get a glimpse of that, you are established. Now that he holds it, He knows this treasure above all else, above all others. Faith so certain shall never be shaken by heaviest sorrow. See, that is again the real faith. Faith that comes from knowledge, from illumined knowledge of God. At one time, I asked a disciple of Ramakrishna, what did he achieve by going to Ramakrishna? And he said, faith. And I knew he was a man of illumination. He had the illumined knowledge of God. But what did he answer? Faith. So that's the kind of faith. Faith so certain shall never be shaken by heaviest sorrow. To achieve this certainty is to know the real meaning of the word yoga. You see, yoga and meditation here is the same, that union. It is the breaking of contact with pain. You are free from all suffering. Not that there won't be suffering and things like that in the external world, but you are not affected by them. You see, they take tranquilizer, for instance. And they are not affected for the time being, you see. Or you take alcohol and you are not affected. But you see, as that wears out, it's gone. And the mind is weak. And here you reach a state that is permanent. You are not affected. And you don't have to take drugs for that. It's the breaking of contact with pain. You must practice this yoga resolutely without losing heart. That is an important point. That without losing heart, you have to resolutely practice it. You see, if you practice for a few days and you don't get anywhere, and then you become discouraged, that will not do. With patience and perseverance, you have to practice. Patiently, little by little, a man must free himself from all mental distractions with the aid of the intelligent will. Distractions will come, but he'll have to practice with patience and perseverance to control the distractions. He must fix his mind upon the Atman and never think of anything else. No matter where the restless and unquiet mind wanders, it must be drawn back and made to submit to the Atman only. Atman means God within. Utterly quiet, made clean of passion, the mind of the yogi knows that Brahman, his bliss, is the highest. Released from evil, his mind is constant in contemplation. The way is easy. Brahman has touched him. The bliss is boundless. You see, just as lust possesses the mind, he can't help it. Similarly, God must possess our mind. The way is easy. Brahman has touched him. That bliss is boundless. His heart is with Brahman. His eye in all things sees only Brahman equally present. No, then he sees that one God everywhere. Knows his own Atman in every creature and all creation within that Atman. That yogi sees me in all things and all things within me. He never loses sight of me nor I of him. He is established in union with me and worships me devoutly in all beings. He doesn't worship God merely or meditate upon God merely with closed eyes then. He begins to see that God with open eyes everywhere, in every face, and he serves his God in loving, worshipping, serving every being. That yogi abides in me no matter what his mode of life. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय आविर्मयेधि रुद्रजत्ते दक्षिणं मुखं तेन मां पाहि नित्यम्. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from death to immortality. Lead us from darkness to light. Light us through and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace.